There was a time not so long ago when I had nothing, not just empty pockets. No, this was deeper than that. I'm talking about the kind of nothing that wraps itself around your soul in the dark of night. The kind of nothing that makes the clock feel slower, the world feel colder, and the dream you once held so tightly begin to fade into the background of your memory. I remember walking through crowds and feeling invisible, smiling, laughing, pretending, while my heart was crying out for a breakthrough that never seemed to come. I didn't want much. I didn't want fame or fortune. I just wanted to matter. I wanted my life to mean something. But here's the truth I came to understand, and you must hear this, you must feel it in your bonest. Your nothing is not the end. It is the beginning. It's in the valley of nothingness that the seed of everything is planted. When you have nothing, you have the opportunity to become something that no one expected. Because when you reach the bottom, when there's nowhere else to go, that's when the miracle starts. There was a time in every great life story when the journey began in absolute obscurity, in silence, in what the world would call nothing. No resources, no applause, recognition, no open doors. Just a soul standing in the middle of the unknown, wondering if anything meaningful could come from their existence. That moment, the one where it seems you've reached the end of the road, it is not your ending. It is your beginning, because the greatest truth, often hidden beneath layers of fear and disappointment, is this: your nothing is not a curse. It's the soil of transformation. The most miraculous journeys are born in the very place where hope feels buried. It is in the absence of everything that we begin to see what really matters. When there's no one clapping for you, when no hand is pulling you up, when the crowd is gone, you discover something far more powerful than validation. You discover what you believe about yourself. In that stillness, in that empty space, something sacred stirs. It is not weakness, though it may feel like breaking. It is not loss, though the world may say you've failed. What it is, what it really is divine opportunity, the chance to see beyond what's visible, the invitation to become something more than what life has handed you. Most people run from nothingness. They're terrified of being unknown, unseen, unimportant. But it is in this very state of obscurity that you are invited to become rooted in truth. When there is nothing external left to lean on, you are forced to dig deep into the core of who you are. And it is there that you discover a strength that cannot be shaken. The kind of strength that doesn't come from success or titles or applause, but from enduring the silence and finding out that you are still standing. Too often, we equate value with visibility. If we're not being celebrated, we think we're not valuable. If there's no platform, no followers, no momentum, we assume we've missed our chance. But the truth is, every mighty oak was once a seed buried in darkness. Every sunrise begins in night. What looks like nothing to the human eye is often the very place where destiny begins its work. This is the paradox of purposing. It starts in the shadows. Real transformation doesn't begin in the spotlight. It begins in surrender, in the hidden place, in the waiting, in the pressing. It's in the moments when no one is watching that your character is carved and your resilience is refined. And this process, this mysterious shaping in obscurity, is not punishment. It is preparation. There are treasures hidden in the wilderness. And some of the most powerful voices, the ones who move nations, first cried out in places no one else heard. They weren't born into greatness. They were pressed into it by their trials, shaped by their solitude, called forth from the womb of nothingness. What the world saw as empty, heaven saw as ready, ready to be filled, ready to be changed, ready to be poured out. When you have nothing, you are in the safest place to be remade, nothing to protect, nothing to lose, nothing to prove. That is the soil where the truest version of you can rise. Not the version shaped by fear or the need to impress, but the version rooted in purpose, forged in quiet places, and anointed for something far greater than comfort or convenience. The valley, that quiet, often lonely place, is where transformation begins, not on the mountaintop, not in the moment of success or celebration, but in the valley, where the air is still and the silence echoes louder than any applause ever could. It's in the low places that the soul is stripped bare, and all the masks we wear begin to fall away. In the valley there is no stage to stand on, no crowd to perform for. There is just you, raw, vulnerable, and facing the truth of who you are. And that truth, though it may feel painful, is the starting point of your becoming. No one likes the valley. No one volunteers for it. But the valley is sacred ground. It is where identities are forged, not borrowed. It is where the illusions fade and what remains is only what is real. When you are in the valley, the comforts that once distracted you are gone. The expectations of others, the noise of the world, the false securities, they all disappear. And in their absence, you are finally able to hear what you couldn't hear before. the still, small whisper of your own becoming, the gentle invitation to grow, to change, to rise. In the valley, transformation does not look like movement. It looks like stillness. It looks like waiting. It looks like roots growing deep beneath the surface where no one can see. It is easy to mistake this stage for stagnation, but there is nothing stagnant about what is happening in your soul. Deep work is being done. Patterns are breaking. Old wounds are surfacing. Things you once depended on are being stripped away, not to leave you empty, but to make room for something truer, something lasting, something eternal. Most of the world is addicted to speed. We crave instant results, instant success, instant validation. But the kind of transformation that lasts, the kind that changes you from the inside out, cannot be rushed. It is formed slowly in the valley. It requires seasons of silence. It requires letting go. It requires trusting that something beautiful is being built even when all you see is dust. And that trust, that radical, unreasonable trust, is the fire that refines you. There is something about the valley that humbles the heart. It breaks down pride, dismantles ego, and forces us to confront our limitations. But it's in that humility that the ground becomes fertile for true growth. When you no longer believe you can do it all on your own, you finally become open to the guidance that has been there all along. You stop striving to control everything, and you start listening. You start yielding. You start becoming pliable in the hands of something greater than yourself. The valley is also the place where comparisons die. You're not looking around to see who's ahead of you or behind you. Because the valley has a way of turning your eyes inward. And in that turning, you begin to find your unique voice, your own rhythm, your own calling. You begin to realize that you were never meant to fit into anyone else's story. You were born to live your own. Pain often lives in the valley, but so does purpose. Discomfort may walk with you, but so does clarity. And in time, what once felt like loss begins to reveal itself as a gift. Because the valley teaches you things the mountain never could. It teaches you to persevere without applause, to believe without seeing, to love without conditions, and to stand even when nothing seems to be moving. The valley is the place where your inner life is built strong enough to carry the weight of what's coming. Pain is preparation for purpose. It doesn't feel like it when you're in the middle of it. When you're hurting, it feels like destruction, like everything is falling apart beyond repair. Pain isolates, presses, and exposes every vulnerability you've tried to hide. It doesn't ask for permission. It arrives unannounced and rearranges everything you thought was secure. But pain, when allowed to do its deeper work, isn't there to ruin you. It's there to ready you. The truth is, we are rarely prepared for the weight of our purpose without being shaped by pain. It's the refining fire, the force that strips us of what's shallow so that what's true can remain. When pain enters, it uncovers parts of us that were never fully healed. It exposes wounds, lies we believed, identities we wore to survive. And though it hurts, that exposure is the first step toward freedom. What is hidden cannot be healed. Pain brings it to the surface not to shame us, but to transform us. In every great life story, pain precedes power. No one becomes whole without walking through something that tried to break them. You see it in the eyes of people who carry quiet strength. They've been through something. They've faced the storm, wept in the night, and still found a way to stand. That kind of inner strength doesn't come from ease. It is forged in pressure, in long nights, in lonely places. Pain digs deep because it has something precious to plant. It's difficult to see the purpose in your pain when you're in the center of it. You want answers. You want relief. You want to know why. But the greater work is happening underneath what you can see. Pain builds capacity. It stretches your heart to love deeper, your mind to think clearer, your faith to root stronger. It doesn't come to destroy you. It comes to break open the shell around you so that what's inside can rise. So many carry greatness locked within them, but it takes pain to crack it open. Purpose is heavy. It demands more of you than you knew you could give. And without the preparation that pain brings, you would not have the endurance to carry what is destined for your life. Pain teaches you to lean, to surrender, to listen. It teaches you what really matters and what was never meant to stay. And sometimes, a pain removes things you begged to keep. Not because you didn't love them, but because they couldn't go where you were called to go. There's something sacred about pain when you let it shape you rather than harden you. You begin to understand people differently. You don't just hear their words, you feel their wounds. You stop judging their journeys because you remember your own. You become soft where you were once harsh, bold where you were once timid. This is the transformation that pain can bring. It breaks you open and then builds you anew. What's being prepared in you through your pain isn't always visible to others. They may see the smile but not the scars. They may hear your voice but not know the nights you spent crying. And that's okay, because the work pain does is sacred and hidden. It's between you and the one who sees what no one else does. It's in those private wrestlings that your public strength is born. You'll carry something out of the pain that couldn't be given any other way. Not just wisdom, but weight, not just healing, but authority. You were born to rise, not to shrink. There is something inside of you that was not made for retreat. It wasn't made to fold in the face of pressure or to cower when life grows heavy. There is a flame within you, even if it's flickering, that refuses to go out. No matter how much you've been through, no matter how many times you've doubted yourself, there is still a part of you that wants to stand, and that part is your true self. You were not created to merely exist, to blend in, or to live confined by fear. You were created with a purpose so vast, so significant, that shrinking was never meant to be part of your story. But life has a way of convincing you otherwise. The voices of the world, past mistakes, the weight of rejection. All these things begin to whisper that you're not enough, that your time has passed, that you missed the window, that someone else is more qualified, more loved, more capable. And if you listen long enough, you begin to believe that hiding is safer than showing up, that shrinking is more acceptable than being seen. But deep down you know the truth. Hiding may feel safe, but it is suffocating. Shrinking may seem like protection, but it is imprisonment. There's a war that takes place in the soil, between who you were conditioned to be and who were called to be. And every day, you get to choose which voice you'll follow, the one that tells you to be small, to stay silent, to dim your light, or the one that calls you higher, the one that whispers, even in the quietest moments, you were made for more. Rising doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's as simple as refusing to give up. Sometimes it's choosing to speak even when your voice shakes. Sometimes it's showing up for yourself after years of abandoning your own heart. You were born to rise because your life carries something the world needs. Not a copy of someone else's gift, not a watered-down version of your truth, but the fullness of your unique voice, your lived experiences, your divine perspective. Every time you shrink, the world loses a part of its light. But when you rise, even imperfectly, even with trembling hands, you give others permission to do the same. Your courage becomes a spark for someone else's flame. Your honesty becomes someone else's healing. Rising doesn't mean being fearless. It means choosing movement even when fear tries to freeze you. It means honoring your calling more than your comfort. It means deciding that you are no longer available for the smallness that shame and doubt have tried to assign to you. When you rise, you disrupt the narrative that says you're too late, too broken, too much, or not enough. When you rise, you begin to live in alignment with the truth of your design. Inside of you is the strength of every storm you've survived, the wisdom of every tear you've cried, the resilience of every time you got back up. These are not weaknesses. They are your credentials. They are the evidence that your story was never meant to end in defeat. Rising is not just about changing your life. It's about reclaiming the power that was always yours. It's about remembering who you were before the world you told to be quiet. It's about stepping out of the shadows, not for applause, but because you finally realize that shrinking serves no one, not even you. The breakdown leads to the breakthrough. It doesn't always feel that way when it's happening. In fact, it often feels like everything is falling apart. Dreams collapsing, plans failing, identity crumbling into pieces you don't know how to gather. The breakdown comes suddenly for some, gradually for others, but when it arrives, it brings with it the shaking of everything you once thought was certain. And in that shaking, something sacred begins to emerge. You don't see it at first. You're too busy trying to survive, too busy trying to understand why the ground beneath you gave way. But beneath the surface, beyond what the eye can see, the breaking is making room for something greater than you ever expected. A breakdown is not just a moment of emotional collapse or spiritual confusion. It's the unraveling of the false layers, the lies you believed, the roles you performed, the expectations that never belonged to you. It's as if life refuses to let you go any further until you shed what was never really yours. In the breaking, the pretending has to stop. The masks fall, the striving pauses. You are brought face to face with your trust self, the part of you that's been buried under years of pressure, perfectionism, or pain. And though it may feel like the end, this is the beginning of freedom. So many people fear the breakdown. They fight it, deny it, run from it. But the truth is, it shows up as a gift disguised in grief, because only in breaking can some walls finally come down. Only in that moment of surrender can the rebuilding begin. When you've lost what you thought you couldn't live without, when your heart has been stretched beyond what you thought it could bear, That's when you find what cannot be taken from you. That's when you find what's eternal. There are some truths you can't learn in comfort. There are some parts of yourself you'll never meet until everything around you falls apart. The breakdown is painful, but it's not purposeless. It forces you to question what you were building your life on. It confronts the illusions. It confronts the versions of yourself that were created to survive, not to thrive. And once those versions fall, there is space for something real to rise. Breakthrough doesn't come neatly packaged. It's messy. It often comes through tears, silence, and isolation. It sneaks in during sleepless nights and long walks where you talk to yourself and to heaven, asking for clarity, for relief, for a sign that it's not all for nothing. And then, slowly, the light starts to return. Not all at once, but enough to take the next step. Enough to breathe without breaking. Enough to begin seeing beauty where you only saw ashes. People look at others who have made it through and admire their strength, but they rarely understand the process. They don't see the breakdown that birthed the strength. They don't see the nights when giving up felt easier than getting up. But the breakthrough was born in those nights. It was born in the moment you chose not to quit. In the moment you chose to believe there was still something worth fighting for. That choice, quiet, private, almost invisible, becomes the seed of transformation. You will never look at yourself the same after a real breakdown, because what emerges afterward is not the same person. It's someone wiser, someone more grounded, someone less impressed by noise and more attuned to truth. The breakthrough may not bring everything you asked for, but it brings you something better. The clarity to know what truly matters, the courage to pursue it, and the conviction that you can rise, not in spite of the breaking but because of it. Your spark is already inside you. It was there before the world gave you a name, before anyone told you who you should be or what you could become. That spark is not something you have to earn or find from an outside source. It's part of your original design. Life may try to bury it. Circumstances may try to dim it, but it cannot be extinguished because it is not made of what the world gives. It is made of something eternal, something sacred, something deeply personal. It may flicker, but it never disappears. It may grow quiet, but it never dies. Too many people spend their lives searching for what's already within. They chase approval, titles, status, recognition, all in hopes that something or someone will finally ignite what's missing. But what they're really looking for isn't out there. It's been inside all along, waiting, whispering, and at times weeping under the weight of years of neglect. The spark doesn't demand the spotlight. It waits patiently, even when you forget it's there. Even when you question your worth or wonder if your life has meaning, the spark remains, steady and stubborn in its quiet insistence that you were made for more. The spark shows up early, often before we have language for it. It's there in the dreams you had as a child, in the things that made you come alive, in the tears you cried for what was broken in the world. It shows up in your sensitivity, in your curiosity, in your desire to do something that matters. But life, in all its noise and expectations, has a way of covering that spark with layers of fear, doubt, and disappointment. People will tell you to be realistic, to settle down, to tone it down. And if you're not careful, you start believing them. You start confusing comfort with calling, safety with significance. But the spark doesn't die just because it's been silenced. It waits. Sometimes for years. It waits for the moment when you finally stop running from yourself. It waits for the moment when you get quiet enough to feel again, to ask the deeper questions, to stop living according to what others want from you, and start living according to what was placed within you from the beginning. That spark knows who you are even when you forget. It carries the blueprint of your purpose. It remembers your fire even when you've lived in the cold for far too long. Awakening the spark doesn't require perfection. It requires permission. You don't have to be fearless. You just have to be willing. Willing to listen, to feel, to try. Willing to believe that your life isn't random, that your voice matters, that your contribution is not optional. Your spark is not waiting for ideal conditions. It's waiting for your yes. It's waiting for you to show up even if you don't have all the answers, even if your hands are shaking, even if you failed before. Some people will never understand your spark. They'll call it strange, dramatic, even delusional. That's okay. It wasn't given to them. It was given to you. It's your responsibility to protect it, nurture it, and trust it, even when it leads you down unfamiliar paths. Especially then, because the spark will always call you to places of greater growth. It will stretch you, challenge you, and demand more honesty than you're used to giving. But in that stretch, you'll find the fullness of who you are. You don't have to wait for the world to validate your light. You were born with the fire already inside you. The question is not whether the spark exists. The question is whether you'll let it speak, whether you'll let it lead, whether you'll let it burn away everything that isn't really you, so what remains is the part that always was. Every great story starts in obscurity, not in the spotlight, not in the applause, not on a grand stage, but in the hidden places where no one is watching and no one is celebrating. This is where the foundation is formed, where the soul is strengthened, where the real work begins. It is the quiet seasons of anonymity that shape the loudest voices of purpose. The world may not see you, may not know your name, may not recognize your worth. But the silence of obscurity is not your enemy. It is the soil where something sacred is growing. So many despise the hidden seasons. They long for recognition, for affirmation, for proof that their efforts matter. They think if no one sees them, then they must not be making progress. But growth rarely happens where crowds gather. It happens in the lonely hours, the unseen efforts, the private sacrifices. It happens when you choose integrity over visibility, when you build character over chasing clout. The depth of your becoming is directly tied to how you steward the unseen moments, the ones that test your patience, stretch your discipline, and demand that you trust what you cannot yet see. Obscurity is where identity is purified. It's where you stop performing for approval and start listening for truth. When no one's clapping for you, you learn to clap for yourself. When no one's validating you, you learn to draw strength from a deeper source. And that kind of strength, the kind that is not dependent on external praise, is unshakable. It is forged in silence, refined in delay, and solidified in waiting. The ones who make the deepest impact are not those who were rushed to the top, but those who were rooted in the depths before anyone knew their name. There is wisdom in the waiting. There is power in the pause. Not every delay is denial. Sometimes the most powerful things take time to grow because their weight demands strong roots. What good is a platform if your soul is not ready to carry the weight of influence? What good is visibility if your inner world is still fractured by insecurity and comparison? The time in obscurity is not wasted. It is protection, preparation. It is purpose doing its deepest work beneath the surface, away from the eyes of the crowd. Many want the crown, but they avoid the cave. They want the result without the refinement. But greatness is not a moment. It's a process. It's a journey that requires you to face yourself in the quiet, to build when no one is cheering, to believe when nothing is working. That kind of faith, that kind of tenacity, that kind of inner fire, it can only be born in obscurity. And once it is, it cannot be taken from you. Because it is not built on applause, it is built on truth. Some of the most anointed voices, the most powerful leaders, the most transformative lives come out of seasons of complete obscurity. They know what it means to be overlooked, misunderstood, underestimated. And rather than allowing that to break them, they allow it to build them. They don't rush the process, they trust it. Because what is rooted deeply cannot be shaken easily. And when the time comes for them to step into the light, they do not falter. Because they were not made in the spotlight, they were made in the secret place. When you feel hidden, it is not because you are unworthy. It is because you are being made ready. Every quiet moment, every uncelebrated effort, every lonely choice to keep going, it is not unseen, it is sacred. It is setting the stage for something greater than you can imagine. And when the day comes for your voice to be heard, for your gift to be revealed, for your purpose to be fully awakened, you will not rise with arrogance but with humility, not with entitlement but with reverence. Because you'll know what it cost. You'll know where you came from. You'll know the beauty that only obscurity could birth in you. There is a divine timing to everything. A rhythm, a sequence season that is perfectly designed, even when it doesn't align with your plans. It can be one of the hardest truths to accept, that your journey will unfold not when you want it to, but when it is meant to. We live in a world obsessed with immediacy. Everything is fast, everything is urgent, and we are taught to measure our worth by how quickly we achieve, how soon we arrive. But real transformation, the kind that lasts and reaches deep into your soul, is never rushed. It is slow, intentional, and often hidden in delays that feel like denials. Divine timing isn't about making you wait to frustrate you. It's about preparing you for the weight of what you've been called to carry. If what you're asking for is significant, then so must be the process that builds you to sustain it. Timing is not just about the right opportunity showing up. It's about you becoming the person who can walk through the door when it opens. So often we cry out for things we're not yet ready to receive, and in mercy the answer is not no, but not yet. That pause is not punishment. It is alignment. It is grace disguised as delay. You might be looking around and seeing others move ahead. Their lives seem to be accelerating while yours feels stuck in place. But comparison will always lie to you. It will show you someone's harvest, but never their planting season. It will blind you to the sacred work happening in your own soil. Divine timing isn't based on what others are doing. It is tailored to your path, your calling, your capacity. And if you rush ahead just to keep up, you might arrive in a place your character isn't ready for. But when you move in divine timing, you don't just arrive. You will thrive when you get there. There is a maturity that comes from waiting, a refinement that cannot be faked. It teaches you to trust, to surrender, to find joy in the process rather than just the outcome. Every closed door, every delayed answer, every season of silence is part of a masterpiece you can't yet see. What feels like stagnation is often sacred preparation. What looks like being forgotten is actually being hidden for the right moment. You are not late. You are not behind. You are on schedule for a purpose that has no equal. The world may call you foolish for waiting, for trusting, for refusing to force your way through. But divine timing doesn't operate by earthly logic. It moves by truth, by wisdom, by an unseen hand that knows what you cannot yet comprehend. Every setback has purpose. Every detour has meaning. You are not being left out. You are being led. And that guidance, though often subtle and quiet, is taking you exactly where you need to go. Sometimes, the delay exists so that others around you can be positioned properly. Your timing is connected to the lives you are meant to impact. The alignment is not just for your benefit. It is for those who will find healing, strength, and hope through your obedience. If you arrive too early, they may not be ready to receive what you've been entrusted to give. And so, the waiting becomes not just an act of faith, but an act of love. Divine timing is always bigger than your personal timeline. You don't have to manufacture the right season. You don't have to manipulate outcomes. Your responsibility is to stay faithful, to keep building, to prepare as if the door could open tomorrow, and to trust that when it does, you'll be ready. Timing may not be in your control, but preparation is. The waiting season is the becoming season. It is the stretching, strengthening, and sanctifying space where purpose takes root and depth is cultivated. You were never meant to stay where you started. The journey from nothing to everything is not about possessions or applause. It's about the awakening of what's already within you. Every breakdown was carving a path to your breakthrough. Every delay was protection. Every unseen moment was sacred ground where your roots grew deeper, your faith stretched further, and your purpose took form. You did not miss your moment. You are becoming it. You are not behind. You are being built. And now, as you rise from the quiet, from the hidden, from the ashes of what tried to break you, you carry something the world cannot give and therefore can never take away. The fireling, the unshakable knowing that your story was always meant to echo. Not because you had everything, but because you found everything after losing it all. This is your time. This is your turning. From nothing to everything.